My fellow senator, great senator from the state of New Hampshire, Senator Shaheen, Jeanne Shaheen.
Thank you. I'm pleased to join all of my colleagues in the Senate and the problem solvers folks from the House who are here to endorse a framework that we believe makes it possible for us to move forward to provide emergency aid to the people who are hurting in this country. To date, we've lost almost 250,000 Americans to COVID. Over 13 million Americans have been affected in some way. As I traveled around New Hampshire over the last 2 months, what I heard everywhere I went was that people were hurting and they need help. So whether it's the small business people, those who are unemployed, cities and towns who are worried about laying off frontline workers, hospitals who are in financial distress, they need help from the federal government. And we are here to say we think there is a pathway to an agreement that can provide that help for a temporary period. Now, the challenge is, and a number of my colleagues have talked about this being a victory for the American people. If we pass it, it is a victory for the American people. This is step one. We have a lot of steps going forward, but to provide help for people who are in need, that's why we're here, and that's what we intend to try and get done. And I'm pleased to be part of this effort. Now, Representative Reed is here.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, coming behind you. I don't need the stool. Thank you, Josh. Well, thank you, and thank you to the senators for such great work. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank the leadership of the Problem Solvers Caucus that worked tirelessly on this effort. I wanted to specifically recognize Abigail Spanberger from Virginia, Dean Phillips from Minnesota, Dusty Johnson from South Dakota, my good friend Josh Gottheimer from New Jersey, Anthony Gonzalez from Ohio, and Fred Upton from Michigan. We worked tirelessly with our Senate partners to bring together, I think, a common sense proposal based on the principles of the Problem Solvers Caucus. We are proud Republicans, we are proud Democrats, we are proud House of Representative members, and we are proud senators. But at the end of the day, we are fundamentally, first and foremost, proud Americans. And our job here in this great Capitol and in the Dome is to listen to the American people. And the American people are suffering. It is time, as my colleagues have said, to deliver these results for them. It is time for this package of $908 billion of emergency relief that just got delivered from the printer on cue.
We should have had you speak earlier.
To be delivered to the American people. I can't think of a better time than the Christmas holiday to honor the call of the American people, listen to that voice, and just ask those in these chambers and the 50 members of the Problem Solvers Caucus and our Senate colleagues that did this work to pass this bill and join us and get it to the finish line and signed into law for the people that are suffering day in and day out. And with that, I'd love to introduce a good friend who has become a very good friend during this process, Angus King from Maine. Senator King.
Well, as everyone else has, I want to thank the people who are standing here for the work that they've done. It's a remarkable moment when you have members of both parties, both houses, an independent, all standing here talking about moving the country forward. This is an opportunity. It's first and foremost an opportunity for the American people to have some relief for this horrible pandemic that has struck our people in such a devastating way in every state, in virtually every community in the country. It's an opportunity to deal with the principal issues, not every issue, not every comprehensive thing that various people have proposed, but what we have tried to do, as you can see from the chart, is to talk about people who are unemployed, small businesses that are struggling, those lines that you've seen on television at food banks. There's a substantial amount of nutritional support in this report. Frontline workers in communities across the country whose jobs are in danger because of the shortage of funds for state and local communities. So this is an opportunity for the American people to have relief. It is also a profound opportunity for this institution to show the American people that we are able to rise to the occasion, that we are able to respond to a crisis, that we're able to respond in a way that is not partisan, that is not political, but is simply aimed at dealing with this catastrophe that has struck the American people. So I'm delighted to be here to join my colleagues. Modesty forces me to mention, however, that a disproportionate number of the senators here are from northern New England. Two from Maine, two from New Hampshire. So I just, for what it's worth, I mentioned that. Yeah, that's okay. But seriously, I want to thank, and I particularly want to thank the members of the House. To have the 50 members of the Problem Solvers Caucus support this gives it a huge head start and a huge amount of credibility, both in both houses and in the country. So I want to thank everyone for their work on this, for their willingness to come together, for their willingness to make concessions, for their willingness to try to solve problems. Thank you all, and we look forward to the next steps over the next week or so in the Congress to turn this, the first step, as Jeanne Shaheen said, into the reality of relief for the American people. And I want to call on my good friend from Alaska, the other bookend of the United States, Maine and Alaska, Lisa Murkowski.
Well, thank you for acknowledging the other side of the country. I am indeed very pleased and honored to have been working with an exceptional group of senators and working with colleagues in the House to respond to the crisis at hand. I think it's important as we look to not only the men and women that are assembled here, but recognizing who we represent, where we come from, and what has happened in our parts of the country. In my home state, this morning at 8 o'clock in Anchorage, we are going into our third round of hunker down. Basically, we're shutting down the businesses, the restaurants, the bars, the hair salons, the gyms, basically what happens in a day-to-day life for the people of Anchorage. And what that then means to them as they're going into a pretty dark and cold time of year with job loss, with insecurity as it relates to food, with insecurity as it relates to not only their schools and their jobs, but whether or not they're going to be able to stay in their home. Our response, our responsibility is to come together, not as Republicans coming up with a plan, not as Democrats coming up with a counter plan, but coming up with a proposal that will provide for targeted emergency relief. And it's been said that this is not what everybody would wish. People are going to look at these buckets and they're going to say, well, wait a minute, my bucket isn't there, or my bucket is only half full. Well, this is emergency relief. This is designed to get us through this next quarter. We know that we have more to do, but we cannot leave. We cannot abandon the American people, the families who are suffering at this time and waiting and begging for Congress to act. So today, a solution, a proposal to move us forward is what we have in front of us. What we need now is more than this tight group of friends that have spent Thanksgiving holiday together by phone. We need more to come together to act to provide the relief for the country that is needed. I'm pleased to turn to my colleague, once again from the other side of the country, Senator Hassan.
Well, thank you, Senator Murkowski, and it is great to be here with my colleagues in the Senate and the House, Republicans, Democrats, and yes, an independent too. It extraordinarily American to have strong opinions and vigorous disagreements. That's what we all sometimes bring to this work. But it is equally American to come together after the arguments and find a way forward, to unite around a common purpose and to remember that when America unites, there is nothing we can't do. And we are in a moment where we are hearing from our constituents from all walks of life about the importance of coming together to get people the relief they need to get through this winter at a time when we are seeing cases spike, hospital beds full, our frontline workers, especially in healthcare facilities, exhausted, frazzled, and worried that somebody will come in for care and there will not be room for them, and they will not be able to do the jobs that they are trained to do. We are at a time period when a restaurant owner in New Hampshire who actually had the guts and determination this summer, as our caseloads were going down and everybody was outside, to open up a new restaurant, who said to me at the same time, "Senator, please don't forget that it's going to get cold in a couple of months, and we're not going to have all this outside dining, and people aren't going to come in, and our businesses are going to suffer, and even successful restaurateurs like me are going to have difficulty. You need to do something." The weekend before Thanksgiving, I was up in a very small town in the Mount Washington Valley to help distribute Thanksgiving food boxes and packages in an outside food distribution center. None of the volunteers there identified as Republican or Democrat to me. They were just neighbors trying to make sure that their neighbors had what they needed to get through the next couple of weeks. And one of the things that stuck with me was one of the organizers of the food drive said to me, "Senator, please don't judge the people who come here by the cars they're driving." They were coming up in cars, the food was being handed in. He said, "We go out of our way to keep the client's confidentiality because people are proud and they have never been in a food line before." And he said, "You can't judge them by the car they're driving because this pandemic has hit everybody in unexpected ways." I think that's what we need to remember right now as we come together to do the will of the American people. This pandemic has hit everybody in unexpected ways, and our job is to come together in Congress and as a people to make sure that we can get through some very dark days ahead with the understanding and hope that we're going to get through this pandemic and be stronger on the other side. Thanks all.
Let me just say that the charts have arrived. We're happy about that. I want to reiterate everything that's been said here because I can tell you we have an awful lot of our colleagues, not just in the Senate and not just in our respective caucuses of Democrat and Republican, that have a deep, deep desire of getting something done and get something done before we leave. So this is just a representative group that we have here. I know Congress has many more in Congress, both on the Democrat and Republican caucuses, that have a desire to get something accomplished. This is a framework, as you can see. We have tried to address every need of the neediest in our country, and all of our states have it, and you can see the categories that we've gone over. We'll be working diligently now to put something together as quickly as possible. I remind you that basically within the next 2 to 3 weeks, people start losing that lifeline, and no fault of their own. We're going through the most difficult time, I believe, that we've ever had in this COVID pandemic, and that's the next quarter, the first quarter of next year. With that, we'll open it up for questions you can ask.
Say one thing, Joe?
Yeah, real quick bit.
You know, sometimes an image is better than what people say. I'm standing back here, and I saw a bunch of Mardi Gras beans. Mardi Gras is canceled in New Orleans, and I'm told they're considering canceling in Mobile. Think of how many people make their living off of that 3-month period of parades. That's when our unemployment lists for. And by the way, it's not just the person who has the Airbnb she's invested in New Orleans. It is the airline folks who are sending people into New Orleans to do it. It's the seafood folks, the lobster people who are shipping it down to Louisiana in our wonderful restaurants. And did I mention K. Paul's closed its doors forever? So if you will, this is almost a metaphor for what we're talking about. Mardi Gras is canceled. We must do something to support those folks whose livelihood has been at least temporarily destroyed.
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Senator, how quickly do you want to move here? When could we actually see a bill that is ready for a vote?
Well, we've worked diligently on that, and we would have one ready very soon. I mean, we can put one together. We have to do something before the next 2 weeks. We have to.
And have you gotten any assurances from Speaker Pelosi or Leader McConnell that they will put this on the House and Senate floors for a vote?
We have not had assurances from them on that for a vote, but I think the American people will put the pressure, showing that there's a group of us coming together that this needs to be done. This is the only group that's made an effort that they've made right now. This is the only group that's come together in such a large gathering and many more people involved. So we know the needs there. We're determined not to go home until we do something. So it's up to them to work with us. We want to work with them. If they have other priorities, please let us know. But right now, we think we've covered an awful lot of the areas of concern. I'll go here, then I'll come back here. Does somebody want to speak about the White House? I would not be the best person to speak on that. Mitt, do you want to speak on that, Mitt?
I wish I were there, but that's we have communicated with Secretary Mnuchin about our negotiations. He hasn't weighed in as to whether he agrees or disagrees. He's offered some advice in terms of figures. We've wondered, for instance, what was the right number for airlines? What did they need? What did bus companies need, and so forth? And he provided some of the information from the negotiations he had had with Speaker Pelosi. But I don't have any prediction on how the White House would react. We've also communicated with the Majority Leader's office about what we're working on, but neither has described whether they would support or not support what we've put together.
I would say, let me just say one thing. Minority Leader Schumer has also been kept up to speed on this. And with that, he's encouraged for us to continue to work in a bipartisan way, bicameral way, to come to an agreement. I'm not going to speak to the omnibus bill right now on that. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Joe, why don't you get Josh?
Hold on, he wants to speak to something on the House.
No, I just want to add in the House, we've been in touch with our leadership as well, and...
Mask off, Josh.
Oh, sorry. We've been in touch with our leadership as well in the House, and I know Tom has as well on the Republican side. And I think what's critically important, we're hearing from members across the spectrum that they want to get something done before we go home, and I think that pressure is going to really get this to the floor for a vote.
Senator Collins has to preside. We want to thank her so much. She's been invaluable to this organization and to basically where we've gotten to today. Yes, ma'am.
So, Senator Manchin, do you think Democratic leadership has been too rigid in their $2 trillion demand for legislation? And on the Republican side, this liability insurance demand, is that
we're not putting blame anywhere. Basically, we know that they all have, there's much need out there. A need's been identified by so many different organizations, from all economists to every organization's put something out there. We've hit a spot where we know that can give us emergency relief. That's all this is about. Emergency relief going through the first quarter, which ends on April 1. President-elect Biden will be coming in. He'll be able to determine if there's more that needs to be done. This is an emergency that gets us through from this holiday season, people that are losing in December, and we just can't leave without that being addressed. That's.
Do you have buy-in from Team Biden and the President-elect?
I think that Team Biden has been buying in. We need to do something. I think you've seen that publicly. Something has to be done. Now, to get a big package or whatever that may be, this is an emergency package, which I would think they'd be very pleased with. I don't know for sure. Yes. Mark, do you know anything about that?
Well, I have to rush back to a banking committee hearing where Secretary Mnuchin is appearing and tend to ask him that. Like Senator Romney, I've had a number of conversations with Secretary Mnuchin, and I know a number of these areas. He's, again, not saying he's saying for the administration, but has helped us drill down on some of these numbers. But I think we're...
Yeah, we'll wrap it up now, but as you can see, a lot of work has been put into this. We're working diligently to have a bill ready as quickly as possible. Pardon me? Oh, yeah, you saw the unemployment, right?
You might describe what that is per week.
Okay. Let me make sure you understand what we're going to go down the chart real quick, okay? You have state, local, and tribal governments, 160. You've got additional unemployment insurance, that's $300 for 18 weeks, $10 billion a week, that's $180 billion.
And it includes gig workers.
Yeah, that includes all the gig workers and people that basically that we covered under the first CARES Act. Retroactive December 1 if we don't get it done until the second or third week of December. And then everything else as far as the money that we have for Paycheck Protection Program, and you see idle restaurant stages, deductibilities, everything that we've been trying to make sure that we haven't missed anyone. Community leader support, which has been great. Transportation, airlines, airports, buses, mass transit, Amtrak, vaccine development, distribution, and testing and tracing, and that's going on now. And if more is needed there, we'll make sure that there's enough, sufficient amount to take care of that. Healthcare Provider Relief Fund, we know all of our hospitals, especially rural hospitals, we have set-asides for rural so they don't get left behind. Education, we have a tremendous need in education. Student loans, basically forbearance on student loans. Housing assistance and rental, we know what people are going through there. And then when you look at that, we have nutrition, and we're talking about nutrition and all forms of nutrition. Feeding people that don't qualify for SNAP, feeding people that basically you're seeing in line now, and not judging by the car they're driving, but basically by the mouths they have to feed. So we're looking at everything we have. Child care, broadband, we know is a tremendous challenge for all of us. And opiate addiction continues to be rampant in my state. It exasperates, unbelievable what's happening. So we've hit everything there, and we acknowledge that federal liability has to be one of the things we consider and do and make sure we do it right. With that, I want to thank all of you. You can ask any questions you want. Some of us will hang around, okay?
Good job.
Thank you all.
Awesome, sir. Thank you very much. Awesome.
I love the metaphor. So I was hoping you might see those down there.
Wasn't it just
For you.
I didn't know what they were doing down there, but I knew it was going to be good.
Did you bring them or they were just, thank you.
Thanks, Freddie.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Good job, guys. Abigail. I'm going to get done.
Get to the finish line. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Yeah. Very good. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Dusty Johnson, South Dakota man. Thank you.
Nice
Thank
to see you.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, Fred. Have fun seeing you.
Yeah, oh yeah, I will. Well, you know what I heard, what Mitt told me that they've already sold out of their day passes for the entire season, Saturday and Sunday. You have to have an icon pass or a, you want to ski on it, sold out.
No, I think this would be something.
Yeah, they're done, reservations. Big down.
Well, it's certainly by the way, as you see, we need leadership to buy in, but we also need to show leadership that there's kind of a groundswell, starting with the American people. We're bubbling up through